Well, crap. I guess we're actually doing this then. I have to review the other 6 shows involved in Nickelodeon's Mega Music Fest. Dora, Koala, Blue's Clues, Wonder Pets, Team Umizoomi, and the Backyardigans. You're probably wondering what order I'm gonna do these in. I already reviewed Yo Gabba Gabba and Fresh Beat Band, the former of which born out of a genuine desire to review it. The latter was born from the Gabba review, right in the Nick Jr. nostalgia high, but going into it I had developed an angle to tackle it from, a thesis to justify analyzing that show in such intricate detail. It helps that already analyzing the Gabba Fresh Beat Band crossover in a scripted format set a good precedent to analyze the rest of the show in a scripted format. The rest of these shows I've yet to analyze at all in a scripted format, so I have no angle or thesis pre-developed, or motivation to do so outside of the fact that I'm now contractually obligated to. So I think the best order to do this is chronologically. The first 3, Blue's Clues, Dora, and Backyardigans, I can justify long-form analyses based purely on their longevity and notoriety, but the latter 3, Wonder Pets, Kylan, and Team Umizoomi, I'm gonna have to look harder to justify their existence. Doing things this way, you guys can see the progression as each review feels less necessary than the last. First up, Blue's Clues. The US government was putting pressure on TV networks to air more educational children's content, so Nickelodeon decided to try and get ahead of the competition by creating their own educational preschool show, a concept that was largely limited to PBS beforehand. A team of 3 young whippersnappers was assembled. Todd Kessler, a freelance producer who'd previously worked on Sesame Street but disliked its format and thought it was too static and not visual enough. Angela C. Santamero, a researcher influenced by Fred Rogers, and Tracy Page Johnson, a freelance artist and animator. The plan was to create a show that was very simple and graphic and slow, and emphasize social and emotional skills while also empowering children by treating them as intelligent. Kessler handled the computer-based production, Santamero handled research, and Johnson handled design. They were given $150,000 to produce a pilot, apparently only a quarter of the budget of Nick's other shows. Blue was originally conceived as a cat, and the show would be called Blue Prince. But Blue became a dog because Nick was already producing a show about a cat in a hat, and renamed to Blue's Clues after test audiences gravitated to that name more than Blue Prince. The test screenings were ultimately successful, leading the full show to enter production. Despite this, the pilot would be unavailable to the public outside of select clips until it was mysteriously leaked online in 2023. It's really just an alternate version of the show's first episode, Snack Time, but with notable visual differences, even cruder animation, and the audio is clearly not finalized. On September 8th, 1996, Blue's Clues made its TV debut.
And now Steve and Blue from Nick Jr.'s newest show, Blue's Clues.
Oh, hi. I'm Steve, and this is my puppy, Blue. Hey, will you come to a sneak peek of Blue's Clues with us? Great.
Join us for a special Nick at Night preview of Blue's Clues and play along with Steve and Blue.
So, look for me and Blue on Nick at Night when we play Blue's Clues.
Don't miss the special primetime preview of Nick Jr.'s Blue's Clues this Sunday at 8, 7 Central on Nick at Night.
Unlike Fresh Beat Band and Yo Gabba Gabba, where it was mandatory that I reintroduce you to the premise and characters of those shows, since there's a good chance you would need a refresher, Blue's Clues has been such a fixture of pop culture for so long that it feels redundant to explain these things that you probably already know, even in my usual snarky tone, since everyone has pretty much already made any joke you can make. But for the sake of formality, I'll try my best. Blue's Clues is hosted by Steve, who in every episode welcomes us into his home before inviting us to join whatever he and his puppy Blue are up to at that moment, which always happens to lead Steve to ask Blue a question, and because Blue can't verbally communicate to Steve, presumably, she proposes a game of Blue's Clues so Steve can find the answer by placing a paw print on the screen. In each episode, Steve gets the paw print off the screen, usually in a unique way that often correlates with that specific episode. Blue's paw prints are very explicitly shown to be alive alive, which is probably why, after a while, more often than not, the paw print gets simply sent off screen rather than full-on erased. It probably felt weird having the host commit murder in every episode. Before Steve can play Blue's Clues, he must grab his handy-dandy notebook from side table drawer. Many episodes have special notebooks themed after them. After being assured help from the audience, Steve explains the game in song form. Blue will place her paw prints on 3 different things, and as Steve finds them, always with help from the audience, he'll draw them in his notebook, encouraging the audience to hypothesize with each new clue. Blue runs off in one direction, and after once again asking the audience, Steve will follow her as the game begins. Along the way, he'll find 3 different problems to solve, often involving one or more of the other residents of the house, and usually at least one requires Steve and Blue to skidoo, immerse themselves into a picture of some kind to help its residents, all contributing to that episode's curriculum and all given plenty of opportunities for the audience to help out. Unlike most shows of its kind, the audience is usually represented in the show by disembodied child voices who answer Steve's questions.
Do we need bananas for this recipe?
Apparently one of the show's many methods of maintaining audience engagement, as preschoolers are known to have short attention spans. I appreciate how, unlike other shows, these elements were woven in subtly, so the show rarely feels overstimulating. It's actually pretty low-key for the most part. In the middle of the episode, a disembodied singing voice will notify Steve it's mail time, so Steve will return to the living room where he receives a letter from Mailbox. Steve will open the letter and it'll cut to live-action footage of people, almost always kids, partaking in an activity related to that particular episode, our friends. Once all 3 clues are found, Steve will once again return to the living room where he sits down in his thinking chair and puts all 3 clues together to find the answer to the initial question, again with our help. Once figured out, Steve and Blue will fulfill the answer, usually joined by the other important characters from that episode, allowing Steve to recap its events, before he and Blue say their goodbyes as the episode ends. Much like the Upside Down show, I appreciate this show's ability to make each episode feel like an adventure, usually without leaving the house, as the skidoos allow for incredibly varied locations and characters. Also, admit it, we all tried to skidoo in real life as kids. The puzzles also get noticeably harder as the episode progresses, and the lessons widely vary in terms of complexity. The show manages to cover a wide variety of topics, mostly academic, but occasionally more social and emotional, on top of the show's overarching emphasis on social skills and kid empowerment. Despite sharing his name, our host, Steve, is unmistakably a fictional character distinct from his actor, Steve Burns, in sharp contrast to its biggest inspiration, Mr. Rogers. It's fascinating that Mr. Rogers is usually cited as this show's greatest influence, since they're practically opposite in some pretty major ways, namely, their hosts and consequently their teaching methods. While Mr. Rogers taught directly, Blue's Clues takes a more indirect approach by presenting its audience with an older figure who doesn't have all the answers. Less of a father and more of a big brother, encouraging kids to solve problems on their own. While most preschool shows would address the audience, Mr. Rogers would ask questions you weren't expected to answer out loud. It was to give you something to think about. Blue's Clues is the first of its kind, as far as I can tell, to include this level of interactivity, where the audience is expected to be an active participant.
This show is about a single man in his 30s who's living with this dog, and his dog goes around putting her paw prints on random objects to try to solve a puzzle that has nothing to do with our lives.
Steve's age is indeterminate. Steve Burns was a young adult at the time, which is apparent by his appearance, but is written as a kid at heart with a seemingly lower intelligence than the child audience as well as Blue. Almost a Wallace and Gromit dynamic. But at the same time, as the sole adult-sized human in the house, he is still somewhat an authority figure, and all the others rely on him in various ways. And yet he's almost always the butt of a joke. Sometimes it feels like he's putting on an act in-universe just as much as he is out of universe, which would make sense since he seems to be an older person interacting with small children. One of the more mundane fan theories is that Steve is simply a babysitter trying to make fun for the kids, which would probably make the most sense in universe, especially with him suddenly leaving for college. But on top of Blue putting her paw print on the screen in every episode, in geography, this happens.
How did you get here today? By car? By boat? By television? Cool.
showing that Steve is fully aware he's in a TV show, which also seems to contradict all the imagination theories. Unless you really want to say that in Steve's fantasies, he's the host of a TV show that takes place inside a book. The various in-character promos made over the years would also support this, if you count them as canon.
I'm ready to watch one of my favorite episodes of Blue's Clues.
A fairly well-known fact is that Steve gained a bit of an unusual following from the show, becoming somewhat of a heartthrob for preteen girls and mothers, even making a list of America's most eligible bachelors. Burns has gotten much praise over the years for his performance, and deservedly so. I don't think he was quite a natural. It takes a few episodes for him to find that perfect tone, but when he did, boy did he. It's especially impressive when you consider he had no idea what he was getting into. He thought he'd be doing a voice role. He had no desire making kids TV his career. The Nick execs didn't want him because they didn't think he fit the image they wanted for the show. It just happened that of all the auditions, he was the one kids responded to, defying the team's research, which suggested kids pay less attention to male voices than female. And he's able to do all this in front of a blue screen, believably interacting with characters who weren't there. In most live-action animated hybrids, they'll use stand-ins to better help the live actors, but Steve wasn't afforded the luxury, and yet still managed to pull it off, while also injecting a quirky but age-appropriate brand of humor to the show. The titular Blue is Steve's beloved dog, who is consistently referred to as a puppy despite episodes where they show her even younger as a baby, even though a puppy and a baby are the same thing. She is shown to be practically as smart as a human, being able to read and write, and yet unlike almost everything else in the show, she can't speak a human language, solely communicating in barks provided by series co-creator Tracy Page Johnson. Hence the premise of the show, though it's made more confusing when every other animal in the show speaks English, except Gopher, but not the dogs. She also attends preschool, which implies she ages like a human, but would still not make her a puppy. Blue's clues have no bounds. On top of being alive, she can place them literally anywhere and however big she wants, and they can even regenerate. A common misconception for kids seems to have been that Blue was a boy, due to Blue being associated with men in Western culture ever since World War II, and her lack of distinctly feminine traits, which of course in cartoons means you're a dude.
I was surprised when I found out Blue was a girl. Since she's blue, which is a color mostly associated with boys, shouldn't she be a boy? On top of that, she was seen hanging out a lot with her cousin Magenta, who was also female. Does that mean Blue is a... Nah, that's just plain silly.
This seems to be something the show's creators took pride in. A male character who eagerly asks for help and a female character who's not defined by her gender. This show is breaking all sorts of norms. The other regular residents of the house primarily consist of common household objects brought to life. Represented in every episode in one form or another is Side Table Drawer, who, as stated earlier, is the one who supplies Steve his notebook in every episode. At the start of the show, she was actually silent outside of saying
Blues, I'm so excited.
Or
I just love Blue's Clues.
And rarely left the living room. She's the only object who can seemingly lose her face on command. But as the show progresses, she comes out of her shell and starts making banter with Steve related to those particular episodes, and feels more like part of the group. She was voiced by Alicia Allen throughout the entire show, which makes her the only main child voice actor to never be recast, which, while commendable, by the end of it, you can tell she was probably getting too old for this.
Today, you're going to find musical clues, and then you can play them on your handy-dandy kazoo.
The second highest recurrent object is Mailbox, who appears in every episode but 4, and those are all towards the end when the show was kind of going off the rails, but we'll save that for later. He usually appears to deliver Steve letters, and like Side Table, he usually makes banter with Steve in the process, though always greeting him and exiting with the same phrases.
Mail's in. You're welcome.
If Steve had a best friend, I think it'd be him. It actually is impressive how palpable their chemistry is when you realize that Steve was just staring off into blank space the whole time.
I like that. It's good.
How about...
Good one. Have you tried?
Oh, I like that.
Unlike Side Table, who serves a similar functional purpose, Mailbox feels like part of the gang from the beginning. He's voiced by series composer Michael Rubin, though when voice acting, he went under the stage name as Sepho Hickory. He was not an experienced voice actor, but damn it, I can't imagine anyone else in the role. With his distinct nasal tone and thick New York accent. He appears at the front of the house in every episode, but always comes in through the back window. You know, so he can reach Steve at the thinking chair, but is also frequently depicted sitting in the back. So either there's two of him or he can teleport. You'd assume he's an adult based on his voice, but no, in Mailbox's birthday, he turns 10. Mailbox is easily my favorite alongside Mr. Salt, voiced by the series' other composer, Nick Balaban. I don't know what it is about this guy, but I can't get enough of him. Apparently, he was originally meant to have a Brooklyn accent.
Hey, Mrs. Pepper, looks like Blue is in the kitchen and might need a little help over there.
But then changed to French. I'm guessing to better differentiate him from Mailbox. Either way, it was the right call, as it just fits better with him being a chef. He appears in almost every episode if you count the intro and credits, but if you only count speaking roles in the episodes proper, he appears in 70, exactly half. Crazy. His wife, Mrs. Pepper, appears in roughly 60, and in season 1 was voiced by producer Penelope Jukes, who in season 2 was replaced by actress Spencer Caden, which props to her, I didn't even notice. They are the only adult residents of the house, as well as the resident chefs, yet rely on Steve just as much as the rest, usually to resolve their arguments.
Sink, float, sink, float, sink, float, sink, float.
Hey, Blue.
Sink, float.
They're a little bit needy. We never hear of anyone actually working in the show, but if I had to speculate, Salt and Pepper are probably the breadwinners. Maybe running a catering company or something. If you're wondering if there's any disturbing implications with these spices being alive, yes, there are. It's already kind of disturbing the way Side Table and Mailbox's faces open, but with Salt and Pepper, there are scenes where they're shown pouring the salt and pepper from themselves onto food. I guess that confirms they are in fact the shakers and not the spices within. The backyard equivalents of Salt and Pepper are brother and sister Shovel and Pail. Again, if you count the intro and credits, they appear in almost every episode. The fact that they're brother and sister definitely brings up questions about Shovel and Pail reproduction, if they're even biological siblings. Maybe they're adopted. And like all the other objects, they're shown to still function like that object is supposed to in spite of their sentience. I remember early on they were actually kind of creative when it came to having these handless characters interact with other objects, but at a certain point they just gave up and succumbed to VeggieTales logic, them having psychic powers. Apparently in the UK they're renamed Spade and Bucket. You Brits do know shovels and spades aren't the same thing, right? Shovel was originally voiced by Stephen Schmidt, who was replaced by Jonathan Press in season 4, who himself was replaced by Thomas Sharkey in season 6. Pail was originally voiced by Marshall Claffey, before she was replaced by Julia Wefrel in season 4, and Nicole Gibson in season 6. And I think of all the recasts, this might be the most jarring.
I'd like spaghetti, please. I'm in the newspaper. I'm reading a book about a horse.
In the bedroom, you have Tickety Talk, an anthropomorphic alarm clock who lives on Steve's nightstand. Again, she appears in every episode, but only if you count the intro and credits. I didn't keep count of each character's appearances because I falsely assumed the Blue's Clues wiki would have that. Being a clock, she's obsessed with time and schedules, and is usually used for lessons involving math and or numbers. In a couple episodes, she mentions her grandfather clock, who's an actual grandfather clock, which implies that eventually all male alarm clocks grow up to be actual grandfather clocks. Or is it becoming a grandfather that turns alarm clocks into grandfather clocks? From what I can remember, this is the only mention of one of the objects having family outside the house. Originally, she's voiced by Catherine Avery, but is voiced by Kelly Nye from season 4 onward. And again, I'll give them credit this time, they actually did a good job getting a voice that matched the original.
Our play is called The Funny Farm. It's the biggest number I've ever counted to.
Slippery Soap is the last of the original main characters, but calling him a main character honestly felt like a stretch at first. Again, he technically appears in every episode, but it felt like he didn't appear nearly enough in the episodes proper. The Felt Friends probably appeared more, which by the end of the show is definitely the opposite. I think this is because he has the least practical use of the main characters. Side table and mailbox are built into the show's format. Tickety being a clock makes her suited to specific lessons that are going to be frequent in a preschool educational series. And Salt and Pepper and Shovel and Pail are tied to specific locations in the house. Slippery is too, but it's much easier to come up with unique problems in the kitchen or the backyard than for the bathroom. Plus they're duos, so you can have them argue. The last thing I want to say about him is that we can only pray that Steve has a non-sentient bar of soap to bathe with for Slippery's sake. Otherwise, that kid has seen way too much of Steve. Also, why do Slippery and Tickety get quirky names while everyone else's names are self-explanatory? Shouldn't their names just be Soap and Clock? There are other characters, many of whom are introduced later, and thus will be discussed later. But you do have Blue's schoolmates. Magenta, who lives next door, and as of now is identical in design to Blue minus the color, and whose barks are provided by crew member Koala Chanda. We meet her owner Miranda in the episode Shy. Her and Steve definitely have some unresolved tension. Green Puppy, Blue's rowdy enemy turned friend, who actually has more significant design differences with smaller ears and teeth. Her barks are provided by Adam Peltzman. Yes, she is also a female despite her male voice. And there's Orange Kitten, female, and Purple Kangaroo, male, who both can actually speak English. Their voices provided by child actors. There's also a Green Kitten, Blue Kitten, Yellow Kitten, Magenta Kangaroo, and Green Kangaroo, but they're all one-offs. Two recurring Skidoo characters are Gingerbread Boy, who has a sister, Gingerbread Girl, and Baby Bear of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, who, as it turns out, is a girl here, because at every turn this show wants to confuse kids about gender. She later gets a younger sister named Baby Bear. Both Baby Bear and Gingerbread Boy appear significantly less as the series continues. A rare recurring human character is Marley, a deaf librarian played by Marley Matlin, who appears in 2 episodes. Sign language is actually incorporated in every episode. There's absolutely no rules about what is or isn't alive in the Blue's Clues world. It doesn't even matter what object you are. There are instances of Anthro objects randomly showing up for 1 episode, and it's always treated as if they've been here all along, which is kind of amusing. Kind of implies they are always there, we just never see them. Later, there are also instances where previously established object characters reappear but without a face, which is mildly disturbing. Is this what happens when objects die? A character who appears in every episode who you probably forgot is Snail, as she's actually a little Easter egg. She appears in the background 3 times in every episode. Sometimes she'll be given more significance and even sings in special episodes. Her voice also provided by Nick Balaban, but she's rarely acknowledged by the main characters.
This is never explained. It's just a constant presence, always watching.
The show's digital production made it easier for animators to sneak in little Easter eggs like this. Similarly, in every episode, the pictures and the frames change, usually correlating with that episode, which must be annoying for the residents of those pictures who are shown to all be alive. In some episodes, they even change throughout the episode, correlating with the events of that episode. The show has a very unique visual style. Everything was actually created physically with arts and crafts materials before being scanned into the computer to be crudely animated. It really helps sell the living storybook vibe, and also kept production efficient and cost-effective, as well as in-house, unlike most animated shows. For the first 2 seasons, there are frequent blue screen errors that actually wouldn't have been noticeable when the episodes originally aired, but by the end of season 3, they become exceptionally rare. Like most preschool shows, music plays a major part. It's not a part of the premise like Fresh Beat Band or Yo Gabba Gabba, but it's a very musical show nonetheless, which makes sense given Steve's background, and putting something in a song makes it easier to remember. Unlike the former, which is pretty much exclusively pop rock, and the latter, which put emphasis on hip-hop and punk rock, the music of Blue's Clues is a lot more eclectic, not really binding in itself to one genre. Interestingly, the the show didn't originally have a proper theme song, just an instrumental as Steve invites us into his home.
Hi out there, it's me, Steve. Have you seen Blue, my puppy? Come on in.
In most episodes, you get the same few songs.
We are gonna play Blue's Clues, 'cause it's really fun. It's a really great game.
Sung after Blue proposes the game. In some episodes, there are very simple, likely unconscious alterations.
We are gonna play Blue's Clues, 'cause that's a really great game. 'Cause it's a really fun game. 'Cause that's a really fun game. 'Cause that's a really amazing game.
But in other episodes, they alter it based on that specific episode.
We are gonna play Blue's Clues, and then Magenta's coming over.
The closest thing to a theme song was Play Blue's Clues, the song Steve sings in most episodes to explain the titular game, presumably for new viewers, or maybe to remind kids with failing memory. This song evolved quite a bit with time. Originally, Steve would just jump right into song after getting his notebook, and the child viewers were included in the chorus.
Blues, 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 Blues.
At a certain point, they started having Salt and Pepper, and later Mailbox and Tickety jump in on the track, quite literally.
Blues, 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 Blues.
But eventually they were removed, which, even though it made it worse from a listening perspective, I kind of miss it. And later the child voices were removed from the chorus too.
'Cause they're whose clues? Blues Clues.
Eventually they had Steve start out explaining the game with help from the kid voices.
'Cause that's the first
Clue, yeah.
Just talking before transitioning into song, but this part was later given rhythm to make it feel more like an actual part of the song.
To play Blues Clues, we gotta find... Oh, a paw print, right.
The instrumentation was also changed twice, and again there's occasional variations for specific episodes. That's applicable to all these songs.
Sit down in a... Thinkin' Rock. We are looking for Blues Clues. We are looking for Blues Clues. We are looking for Blues Clues. Wonder where they are.
That one's self-explanatory.
They both like to do. Ooh. The mail's here. Let's go.
Shortly followed by...
Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes, I want to wail.
And at the end of each episode, we get the So Long song, which also had kid vocals that were eventually removed.
Come again. Bye-bye.
All huge earworms that you probably know by heart. On top of the musical numbers, the score is also very good and memorable, and was just as integral a part of the show, as specific music cues are used to increase viewer attention at key moments. The show doesn't commit itself to one new song per episode, but when they do pop up, the episode is almost always the better for it, even if it's just a jingle. They didn't have to go as hard on some of these songs as they did.
The tundra is cold, and everywhere you look, it's white and snowy.
This is how the rain comes.
Here's how it rains.
Big props to Nick and Mike. They really brought a lot to the show. Not just by breathing life into my two favorite characters, but by composing all the music, which is probably the most consistently high quality aspect of the show. Blue's Clues first premiered as a sneak peek on Nick at Night at 8 o'clock Sunday, September 8th, 1996, which shows how confident Nick was in the series, and that confidence paid off as it was apparently Nickelodeon's highest rated series premiere up to that point. With that kind of success, unsurprisingly, it wasn't long before the show returned to prime time. First with Blue Wants to Play a Game on March 16th, 1997, which is a weird choice since it's not a very remarkable episode, even in season 1. It is the first appearance of Gingerbread Boy, though, and one that's enhanced by an original jingle.
Up a mountain and over a bridge, and in between the red and green apple tree.
What Does Blue Want to Make sees the creation of a sock puppet, a puppet seemingly controlled by Steve, but you can't fool me, this thing clearly has a mind of its own. The season finale, Blue's News, sees the Blue's Clues family get bigger with Mrs. Pepper giving birth to her and Mr. Salt's first child, a girl, Paprika, which brings up questions about spice reproduction, and apparently literally everyone except Steve was told ahead of time.
Figure out the big news yet? Whoa!
Hey, how'd you know?
I just know.
Yeah, but how come I'm the one who... But
Steve, can you help me?
Still, it's very sweet. A running theme throughout these Nick Jr. shows so far, and one that will continue through the rest, is the emphasis on found family over blood family. Yo Gabba Gabba introduces blood relatives for all of the toy children, except Roby. But Plex and DJ Lance are still the most prominent parental figures in the lives of these toy children. The Fresh Meat Band have no established relatives. All they have is each other and their friendship, and that's enough for them, along with their other friendships. Paprika might be Salt and Pepper's only child by blood, if Spice Shakers have blood, but they are also parents to all of the residents of the Blue's Clues house, despite the lack of shared blood. Season 2's What Experiment Does Blue Want to Try introduces the son, also voiced by Michael Rubin, when Super Steve and Blues could do to space, able to breathe just float in there, which of course leads to the iconic Planet song, which is most likely how you learned the planets as a kid.
Well, the sun's a hot star, and Mercury's hot too. Venus is the brightest planet, and Earth's home to me and you.
What Was Blue's Dream About is a favorite of mine, seen everybody's dreams. Math reveals the in-universe currency is blue dollars, which brings up a lot of questions. Also introduces this pervy cash register, but my absolute favorite is Blue's Birthday, the show's first true primetime special, with that damn song.
Have a happy birthday, you. We'll have a great day too.
It's the first episode I remember that unites the entire main cast, with even some tertiary characters making it to the celebration. It's also this episode that sees the introduction of Blue's beloved pet turtle, Turquoise. A pet has a pet. Even celebrities couldn't resist getting in on the celebration. Gloria Estefan, the Mowry twins, Amanda Bynes and Michelle Trachtenberg, and Rosie O'Donnell, except on the VHS version, which actually has some additional scenes. Funnily enough, the UK version also cuts Rosie O'Donnell, and includes additional appearances from Melissa Joan Hart, the cast of The Wubbulous World of Dr. Seuss, Whoopi Goldberg, the Spice Girls, and this unidentified woman who was apparently a Nickelodeon UK presenter at the time. Likely due to the show's popularity, in Season 3, the episode order was raised from 20 to 30, which you think might affect the quality, but no, this is definitely their best season. Going into Season 3, it feels like they started doing a lot more episodes getting the whole gang together. Art Appreciation, Occupations, Pool Party, Cafe Blue. I personally consider this the peak of the show. The episodes are at their most consistently memorable here, and most of the show's best songs come from this run. They celebrate Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas all in this season, though the show seems hesitant to explicitly have its characters celebrate specific holidays. In Blue's Big Costume Party, they're not celebrating Halloween, they're just all wearing costumes and everything's spooky, including the return of Boo from the show's previous not as explicit but still clearly Halloween episode, What Is Blue Afraid Of? A scaredy cat ghost. How ironic. He's clearly a child, but don't worry, he's probably not actually the spirit of a dead kid. His dad, who's also a ghost, still feeds him, and I don't imagine actual ghosts would eat, so it's probably just using a ghost as a generic monster. In Thankful, they're not celebrating Thanksgiving, they're just all getting together for a big dinner commemorating thankfulness. Still another very sweet episode. I wonder if they partially did this to keep the show more open to foreign markets. And finally, there's Blue's Big Holiday, where in the Blue's Clues house they're clearly celebrating Christmas, but no, they're just celebrating the holidays. They go to the Island of Misfit Toys, where they find toys for Blue's school friends, an orange dressed doll for Orange Kitten, a pocket for Purple Kangaroo since
his sister has a pocket, but he doesn't,
and green blocks that knock themselves down for Green Puppy. Even though if the blocks knock themselves down, doesn't that remove the fun? All these toys are alive, of course, including the blocks, who have little ties for some reason. They leave the house to deliver the toys, and it snows because, of course, on TV it always snows on Christmas. We find out Green Puppy and her owner Winona celebrate Christmas, which is
like a special
birthday.
Which is one way to put it. But wait, Steve and Blue met Mother Nature, voiced by Nell Carter, in environments. So does Mother Nature coexist with the Christian God in the Blue's Clues universe, or is she just one of his many forms? We find out Orange Kitten and her owner Sam celebrate Hanukkah, except Orange Kitten is bipedal and speaks English, so it's even more like a parent-kid relationship than an owner-pet relationship. And a purple kangaroo and his father, Tyrese, celebrate Kwanzaa. We even get a letter from Magenta, Sledden, with no sign of Miranda. You guys know how I feel about Christmas specials, though. Oh, I'm sorry. Holiday specials. I've mocked these shows for having forced inclusivity in their predominantly Christmas episodes, but Blue's Clues actually puts an effort in that department by having actual characters celebrate the other holidays and explaining them a little, instead of just being like, look, a menorah, aren't we inclusive? As much as I like GABA and Fresh Beat Band's Christmas specials, you can't beat the classics. And of course, there were two more primetime specials, Blue's Big Treasure Hunt and Blue's Big Pajama Party. The former is somewhat a departure from the show's format. Before Steve can even finish the intro, it's mail time, and he's delivered a box. Inside, a treasure chest. When opened, a female voice informs Steve of a treasure hunt, and Blue already has a map since she's apparently in on it. So now they go on the treasure hunt, while also playing Blue's Clues to find out who set it up. We figure out it was Steve's grandma, played by one of the Golden Girls, and the treasures inside mailbox, making the episode come full circle. For Blue, a key to unlock all her favorite treasures, and for Steve, banana cookies. A close runner-up for my favorite episode. Blue's Big Pajama Party begins at nighttime. Shocking. They're having a pajama party, and we must play Blue's Clues to figure out what Blue wants to do. We look for animals in the dark with Shuffle and Pail, and return to space, where the sun is this time joined by Earth and Moon. Finally, Steve reads everyone a bedtime story and they all go to sleep. In the original airing, there was a cold opening and post-credits scene featuring Julia Louis-Dreyfus. The promos for this episode also add extra lore by showing Steve playing Blue's Clues to find out Blue wants a pajama party. Blue's Big Mystery introduces another mainstay character, Periwinkle. There's a mysterious fort in the backyard, so we must play Blue's Clues to find this mystery builder. I like how they really play up the detective angle in this episode. Blue's Clues being treated less like Blue giving hints and more like collecting evidence. The mystery builder turns out to be Periwinkle, a kitten who isn't bipedal like the other kittens. He's their new neighbor, who moved in from the city, and in this episode, and only this episode, is voiced by Cameron Bowen. In the rest of this season, all the way through season 5, he's voiced by Kenny Kim, and in season 6 is voiced by the late Jansen Panettiere. He's not a stray, as he has a house, but no reference is made to him having an owner. In Periwinkle Misses His Friend, we find out about his city friend Plum. Periwinkle might be my third favorite character. He was definitely my favorite as a kid, which probably had something to do with him being an aspiring magician, as I also had an interest in magic at that age, largely due to children's programs like this and The Wiggles. By the end of 1997, Blue's Clues was the highest rated cable show for preschoolers, and as a whole was only outranked by PBS shows Arthur and Barney and Friends. And by the end of 1998, the show was as recognized by parents as Sesame Street and Barney and Friends. By 2000, the show had a successful live tour, was an awards darling, and had generated over $1 billion in product licensing. Blue was in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. There was frickin' blue applesauce. It was also the subject of many marathons and promotional events. In the summer of 99, they had an event where every weekday at 12:30, Steve and Blue would be showing their favorite episodes of Blue's Clues. But they actually just showed every episode aired up to that point chronologically. Why'd you lie to us, Steve? And with several primetime specials under its belt, there was really only one next step: a feature film.
Nick Jr. is proud to present Blue in her first movie, Blue's Big Musical. It's coming this fall, available only on videocassette and DVD. Come on, let's take a peek. Sing, dance, and play along with Steve, Blue, and their newest friend, Periwinkle. It's Blue's first movie, Blue's Big Musical, available only on videocassette and DVD. Coming this fall from Nick Jr. and Paramount.
Wow, it actually wasn't her last movie. Good job, marketing team. Blue's big musical movie was released October 3rd, 2000, and would be a direct-to-video release as opposed to a theatrical one, which was probably the right call because as big as the show was, historically, theatrical preschool movies fail at the box office, even ones based on massive franchises like Barney, Sesame Street, or Thomas. In terms of plot and presentation, it definitely could be described as just an extra long episode. They don't actually leave the house, which is something that even the show itself had already done. The whole plot of putting on a music show for the neighbors is something that would fit fine in a regular episode, and even the skidoo is just a music sheet. And obviously, being direct to video, they weren't given an increased animation budget, though I'm not sure how you would improve the animation without taking away its unique look. But where it does exceed the show's usual standards is with the characters and, of course, the music, which I feel was smart since the skidoos already allowed the characters to go pretty much anywhere. The only place they didn't go was the real world, but who wants to see Blue's Clues lost in New York? With its rigid formula, the show didn't really have room for character arcs, but this movie has two, and both actually build on established traits from the show. Steve is frustrated that he can never find clues on his own. Meanwhile, Blue needs a new singing partner after Tickety loses her voice, and as it turns out, Side Table Drawer wants to sing, but is too shy to tell Steve, playing on the fact that she's mostly been in the background up to this point. It doesn't help that she's interrupted at every turn by people telling her she's a drawer, so holding stuff is the only thing she's good for. Reminded me of this scene from Geography.
Why am I always in the living room?
Oh, well, 'cause that's where you live. The living room is your neighborhood. Side Table Drawer.
Both are resolved through Steve finding the last clue on his own, overcoming his butt monkey status and becoming independent, while also realizing what Side Table wanted to tell him all along, which is that she should be Blue's singing partner. Wait, I know Blue can't talk, but couldn't she have just pointed at Side Table? This whole plot brings up questions about this universe. On top of the Side Table arc, their show is all about what they want to be when they grow up, which was previously touched on in the episode Occupations. They keep it consistent from that episode that Shovel and Pail want to be vets and that Slippery wants to be a sailor of some sort, not the rest though. But to what extent can an object disregard the role it was literally made for and take up a different career? Heck, in that Occupations episode, Mailbox mentions how he had to work up from delivering postcards to letters to packages, and later in Blue's school mentions going to school to learn about his letters. But in this movie, he's an aspiring comedian, and Blue wants to be a teacher despite not being able to speak a human language. Later in Blue's school, when Blue plays teacher, Steve has to translate for her.
Oh, so we need to figure out what the weather is like today.
I'm not gonna act like this is brilliant drama or anything, but it's still an extra something that justifies that length. On top of the usual jingles, we get a ton of new songs, most of which are fairly short, and there were also some soundtrack exclusive songs and extended versions, but Today's the Big Day, putting it all together and Sing There It Is, featuring Ray Charles as G-Clef, definitely all feel higher scale than the show's musical numbers.
We're having a show out in the backyard. All our friends will join along.
We can help with getting ready. We'll even help out with the songs.
'Cause we're gonna be
what we wanna be at the show together.
We're putting it together. Two heads are much more fun.
I can't say where it comes from, but when you sing, there it is.
The show was already doing gangbusters on video, and this movie was similarly successful, selling over 3 million copies by 2006. Blue's Clues fever was high, with no signs of stopping, but going into its 4th season, the show was about to see some major changes which arguably led to its decline. So let's get into it. Season 4 starts with Magenta Gets Glasses, which is often treated as a major episode despite not airing prime time, and its status quo change change being very minor, a slight design alteration. Magenta gets glasses to solve her sudden vision problem. It's also a fairly dull episode, though kid shows like this definitely contributed to my childhood perception of glasses as a cool thing I wanted to have instead of a lame nerd thing as they're usually presented. Despite Magenta appearing many times after this is the last time we see Miranda. Bye, Miranda. Next, we get a streak of 4 episodes with a strong focus on imagination and pretend play. Imagination, get it? Where Mr. Salt learns from the other residents how to use his imagination. The anything box, about a box that can be, well, anything. Adventure, where the residents roleplay a generic fantasy adventure. And Super Friends, where they roleplay as superheroes, all of which are among my favorite episodes. There's no other instance in the show of this many episodes with such a similar curriculum being produced back to back, which makes me wonder if maybe this was supposed to be the overarching curriculum of the whole season, in which case I know what probably threw a wrench in those plans, which is that Super Friends marked the 75th episode produced of the show, after which co-creator and co-producer Todd Kessler left the show unannounced to pursue other projects. But the show must go on, and their next string of episodes were something even more ambitious. Instead of just giving Salt and Pepper another baby out of nowhere, we have 3 episodes leading up to Salt and Pepper giving birth to their second child, a boy, Cinnamon, in The Baby's Here, another primetime special, followed by an epilogue of sorts in the form of Making Changes. This unfortunately means we have to see Mrs. Pepper pregnant, which is a horrifying image and implies spices reproduce in a similar way to mammals. But damn it if these episodes aren't also really sweet. We even meet Grandma Cyan. After this, we largely go back to business as usual. In Un Dia con Plum, we actually meet Periwinkle's friend Plum. We follow up perhaps the show's strongest string of episodes with the show's most inconsistent up to that point. There are still more great episodes in this chunk than otherwise, but there's a lot more forgettable episodes. Compare this to season 3, which was releasing great episode after great episode at this point, almost making me think they maybe peaked too early here. They also reshot the intro, and boy does Steve not bring the same enthusiasm as before.
Hi out there, it's me, Steve. Have you seen Blue, my puppy? Come on in.
Hi, it's me, Steve. Is that you?
It is. Great.
Could you help me find Blue? Thanks. Come on.
It's clear the show was running out of steam, which is completely understandable. They were rapidly approaching 100 episodes at this point. But they couldn't stop there, it was too popular to quit. The show must go on, even without its host. In Blue's School, one of the stronger episodes from this block, there's a weird moment where Steve says this.
One day, I want to go to college.
In the fall of 2000, Steve Burns decided to leave the show, officially departing in January 2001. For now, his only stated reason was a simple lack of desire to lose his hair on a children's show. And of course, there were many rumors suggesting more dramatic reasons. So after 1,500 auditions, unknown actor Donovan Patton was chosen to take his place. Unlike Steve, Donovan would perform under the stage name Joe, because Donovan was deemed too hard for preschoolers to pronounce. Couldn't you have called him Don or Donnie? To make the change easier on preschoolers, Joe was introduced in an arc of 3 episodes. Joe and Tell, Joe Gets a Clue, and Steve Goes to College, which from how they're presented were clearly meant to air over 3 weeks, but Nick wanted another primetime special to promote, so they combined them to all air in one night under the name Joe's Scrapbook. Joe has made a scrapbook to
tell the story of when I first came to Blue's Clues.
If these wraparounds are canon, that means Joe came by train in a hot air balloon, meaning he must have been pretty far. We then transition to Joe and Tell, or Joe's First Day. The former is the better name despite being a pun, because the latter implies a bigger role for Joe than he has in the episode.
I'll meet you in the bathroom, give you my Joe and Tell.
This episode is fairly standard. All you need to know is at the end, Steve's little brother Joe joins them for show and tell, showing off his duck Boris, which parallels Steve's anteater Horace, who I haven't mentioned because he's far less prominent than Boris becomes. Joe loves this duck. Weird they gave Steve a strange favorite animal, but not Joe. We also find out Joe has a lot in common with the other residents because he brushes his teeth and likes turtles. Oh wow, I have a lot in common with Joe too. He even joined Steve for so long at the end. They treat it like a surprise one-time visit, but it's clear Steve and Joe coordinated it. There's no way Joe would travel all this way just for show and tell when he didn't even visit for Thanksgiving or Christmas. Though there's also no way this backpack would fit all the luggage he'd need. Steve also remarks that Joe has grown, implying he hasn't seen him in some time. It's clear that Joe was supposed to feel like just another one-time human character, but because they aired it as part of a big special, that already gave Joe a greater sense of importance. Joe returns in the very next episode, Joe Gets a Clue, where he plays Blue's Clues with Steve, and unlike Miranda, Steve lets this man use his notebook, sit in his thinking chair, and gives him his own notebook shaped like the thinking chair. Clearly, something's up. Finally, there's the episode that devastated preschoolers all through the country, Steve Goes to College, where Steve leaves for college, leaving Joe in his place, which calls his age into question, especially since there's been no indication of prior schooling and Joe's the younger brother. Starting with this episode, We Sat On Down, originally from Blue's Big Treasure Hunt, officially replaces We Just Figured Out Blue's Clues. The special ends with a preview of what's to come and a dedication to Steve. They went about this about as well as they could have. Comparing it to the Fresh Meat Band, which also had a major recast, with how much the show emphasized the friendship of the band, it might have taken a whole extra season to make it believable that Marina would leave with another character taking her place, and they didn't have a whole extra season, so I don't blame them for just replacing her with a look-alike, and hoping the kids wouldn't notice. Steve was such an icon that a simple recast wouldn't cut it, and him being the host blurred the line a bit more between Steve as a character to be cast and Steve as a role to be filled, especially since, unlike the Fresh Beats, he used his real name. Because of this, they were able to make his departure and replacement feel natural in just 3 episodes. And by acknowledging his departure in universe, we're also able to help kids when they experience something similar in their lives. It was also smart to make Joe Steve's brother, since that gives the characters a pre-existent connection to him, making it more believable how quickly he fits in. Unlike Steve, who was always seen in his green striped shirt, Joe wears a rotating wardrobe of square patterned shirts in all the colors of the rainbow. A decision I question, since having Steve wear the same shirt was undoubtedly done to make him easily recognizable for kids. But apparently it was because they got complaints from parents whose kids refused to wear different shirts because they wanted to be like Steve. Clearly they didn't feel too strongly about it though, as they didn't repeat that change when they brought the show back. Steve's green shirt also worked well since it really popped in front of the show's backgrounds. With Joe, how well each color works can easily be illustrated by the number of episodes each appears in. Red is dead last, appearing in only 4 episodes, which makes sense since that's already such a prominent color in the show. Yellow is close with only 5 episodes, purple appears in 10, blue in 11, and green and orange are his best colors with 12 appearances each. They should have just made orange his color. Joe gets some hate from 90s kids who only grew up with Steve, but I grew up with both, so I have no bias, and he really isn't bad at all. Sure, he's not the same as Steve, but he brings his own energy to the show, even if his renditions of Steve's songs are a bit jarring to listen to.
Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me wanna wag my tail. When it comes, I wanna wail.
But a good host can only get you so far. Joe gets 5 solo episodes at the tail end of season 4, and while there's some good stuff in there, they're mostly forgettable. But hey, that's only 5 episodes. Consider it a trial run. Let's see how Joe fared when he got his only full season of 30 episodes. There's some good stuff in here, but it's mostly forgettable. Like before, the episodes are usually enhanced when including an original song.
Colors, colors everywhere.
And
I'll never forget. No, I'll never forget my alphabet.
Can easily stand toe-to-toe with the Planet song. Bedtime Business is one of the strongest offerings this season, largely because of the music. Joe also sleeps in the thinking chair. Would Steve really mind if he slept in his bed while he's gone? This season also happens to introduce a completely new intro, now showing Blue taking the book off the shelf and opening it, appearing to be a pop-up book before transitioning into cartoon world. And now a song with lyrics instead of just instrumental. final, and Mr. Salt reading the title of the episode at the end. Something weird is that while starting in season 3 and continuing into season 4, they'd often have these great episodes that bring the whole cast together. In this season, they seem to limit themselves to just a few characters per episode most of the time, which makes the cast feel smaller. In a surprise guest, we meet Blue's teacher, Miss Marigold, a human but a felt human. Great song, by the way.
So everything's where it belongs.
Again, Nick and Mike went way harder than they had to. In previous seasons, human characters were always portrayed by live actors, which made sense, it was consistent. But from here on out, all new human characters are portrayed by felt, which makes things confusing and less grounded. Apparently there are two types of humans in the Blue's Clues world, flesh and felt. Blue goes to the doctor, sees the rather abrupt introduction of Blue's beloved toy, Polka Dots, who at this point is consistently referred to with female pronouns.
Let's look for Polka Dots. She's a puppy, just like Blue.
You found her!
And you helped find her.
This season contains a whopping 3 primetime specials, more than any season before. First, it's Joe's birthday and Joe's surprise party, which does actually subvert the format in a cute way by having Salt, Tickety, Slippery, and Periwinkle play Blue's Clues while Joe's distracted. Second is our Neighborhood Festival, another rare episode of this era that actually brings the whole cast together, including the return of Marlee Matlin as herself, and was dedicated to the late Fred Rogers. The third and final is Blue Takes You to School, which sees the start of the new school year.
I won't be far. And I'll be back.
Is the vacuum your godforsaken dad?
Technically, there's a 450 count the 100th episode celebration, which despite being treated as an episode, was actually produced outside of the season order, hence its absence on streaming platforms. It also was neither the 100th episode produced or aired, and confirms that everyone in Blue's Clues is fully aware they're in a TV show, and that the Blue's Clues house is just a set. The cast is all dressed up to throw a party celebrating the 100th day we've come to visit, with Mr. Salt as host. After a musical number, including a rare performance from Snail, we get a return appearance from Steve, wearing a top hat. I wonder why.
I'm counting to these huge numbers, and I'm reading amazing stories. Yesterday, we did the cyclone experiment.
No.
Yep. And I am co-captain of the junior varsity hopscotch team.
He and Joe introduce a montage of the places they've been, and we even get the return of Sock Puppet, and find out Mr. Salt might not even really be French.
That brings us to our next montage.
Ooh, montage.
Oh, you like that word? It's French. It means cheese.
Followed by a montage of the laughs we've had. Tickety introduces a montage of the things we've learned. Blue introduces a montage of the clues we found. Side Table performs a special song backed up by flashlights, leading into a montage of the songs we've sung. Steve gives us a limerick before leaving to return to college, and we get a sneak peek of upcoming episodes. Even in the montages before this, though, there were episodes that had yet to air, and some that were clearly unfinished, with incorrect green screen backgrounds and or animated characters not being put in yet. Some of those episodes also being in this montage. Clearly they had no idea when this would air. This sneak peek is actually largely recycled from the sneak peek in the credits of Joe's scrapbook.
And then the million.
Joe, 1 million days is over 2,000 years.
And then the trillion.
And 1 trillion is over 2 billion. We end with a series of testimony from kids sharing their favorite Blue's Clues memories. Let's Ride feels like a bit of a retread of the classic episode Blues ABCs, and has a song that just kind of feels like a poor man's Colors, Colors Everywhere.
Letter J has just a look like a candy cane or a cubby hood.
But at least he's the return of beloved character Marky the Marker, originally seen in Drawlin' with Blue, and isn't nearly as bad as Body Language, which on top of being another boring, forgettable episode, introduces the absolute worst change ever made to the show, which once you've seen what they did to the show next season, you know is saying a lot. Instead of Joe solving the clues one by one with help from us, Joe, I guess, hallucinates the clues solving themselves, in song form.
I'm hands on hips, I'm scrunched up eyebrows. I'm hands on hips, I'm scrunched up eyebrows.
This had to be because some research they did showed kids paid less attention during the clue-solving parts. And unlike their previous ways of keeping engagement, which were subtle, this is completely obnoxious, grinding the episode to a halt every 6 minutes to listen to some crappy singing, and also makes the show less satisfying to watch, since Joe doesn't actually have to work anything out really. It's all the clues. This episode also ends with No So Long song, which worked much better in Alphabet Train, since that one ended with a much better song than this one.
Bye! Thanks for all your help! Bye! I'll see you later! Bye!
God, even the music is going downhill. This isn't good. In Blue's big car trip, Joe and Blue go for a ride with their friend, Carmen. Get it? Who is a car seat brought to life, which somehow has more disturbing implications than any of the other anthropomorphized objects on this show. When they have an identical, lifeless car seat directly across from her. She's part of the car, and seemingly the only part of the car that's alive. They really should have just had a human character instead. We get a reprise of Wait from Patience, which isn't a particularly great episode. Who would have guessed an episode all about patience would be so tedious? But it does have a particularly memorable skidoo and introduces Baby Bird, who actually kind of becomes a mainstay character after. Something cool about this episode is that the late Casey Kasem has a voice cameo as a radio host, clearly in reference to his extensive radio career, though you probably know him better as the original voice of Shaggy.
Here's the song you've all been waiting for. It's hip, it's hot, it's #1 on the pop charts. It's the Backseat Boogie.
Morning Music is a pretty weak successor to Bedtime Business, and also retreads the classic episode What Does Blue Want to Do on a Rainy Day, with much of it being operatic. I did not need a whole song about crapping.
Gotta go, gotta go, gotta go.
The breakfast song returns from the movie, surprisingly with entirely new lyrics.
Pass me the granola.
I put it in a bowl of
Pancakes.
berries
And orange stew.
Here is a banana.
It's great in some manana.
A muffin.
A carrot.
Some maple syrup.
How about a piece of fruit?
And Randy Travis guest stars as Shoehorn. It shows how important music is to the show when most of the guest stars are music related.
First thing you do to tie your laces is hold them tight and make them switch places.
Season 5 ends with our second and final Christmas episode, Blue's First Holiday. Mr. Salt and Mrs. Pepper have a present for all of us. 2 home movies. In both of them, the kid characters and Joe are all babies, even the snail and Horace, which means objects surely must age slower than humans, right? Except wait, no, Mailbox is said to be 10, and he's also a baby here, meaning he must age faster but still slower than the human characters. Meanwhile, Blue and all the objects age even slower than Mailbox. Joe is apparently living at this house as a baby, but left at some point for unknown reasons, which would imply he's an adult now. Steve is also there as a kid. I swear he looks like Dino Dan, and also seems at least 8. Only person missing is Blue. So we see the day we met Blue. Everyone had their holiday presents except Steve, who really wanted a puppy. Mailbox delivers him his present. All the baby objects are able to speak full sentences, but definitely don't remember these events, so they clearly age weirdly. Tickety also had little shoes for some reason. His present is a book about a puppy, which tells the story of a puppy farm with one dog that wasn't like the rest, named Blue. Steve loves this book so much he reads it all day, and rather inexplicably, the next morning, Blue skidoos out of the book, and I guess is an even younger puppy. A baby puppy, with a diaper and everything. Blue and Steve hit it off immediately. We see a younger sock puppet, which makes no sense since we saw Steve create sock puppet in What Does Blue Want to Make? And Blue decides to stay. This whole backstory retcons the babies here, where we see what appears to be a picture of Blue among a litter of puppies, implying Steve adopted her like you'd adopt a dog in the real world. And it always seemed like all the things she does that are abnormal for a dog to do in the real world were normal things for dogs in this world. Instead, she's a character who left her book for the world of Blue's Clues, which is already in a book. Joe gets a phone call from Steve. Come on, Steve, you couldn't come home from college for Christmas? I mean the holidays. Joe gets a holiday card, which of course is the obligatory part where we learn about all the different winter celebrations. Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, even Ramadan, which makes this and Chalk Zone the only kid shows I know of to actually include Ramadan. Pretty bold of them in 2003. Of course, they still dance around the religious aspects. We then get Blue's first clue, where Joe loses his duck blanket and Blue invents Blue's Clues to help find it. Conveniently, Side Table already had the handy-dandy notebook and crayon to give to Steve. We even get the origin of the thinking chair.
Oh, I'll think here.
In the end, it turns out it was left with a snowman, and Steve returns it to Joe after putting it in the wash, and now all is right in the world. This special all but confirms that Steve and Joe's biological parents are out of the picture somehow, and the season ends with the characters playing in the snow the same way they did all those years ago. I really like this episode because of Christmas and nostalgia, and you get to see all the characters as babies, but that retcon does bother me. But looking at the problems I've mentioned developed as the season continued, besides the episodes being duller in general, none of them have anything to do with Joe, first of all, but also they're all pretty minor. The only one that actively detracts from the show is the talking clues. And in terms of retcons, the one they closed this season with is still not nearly as bad as the one they open next season with. The show's sixth and final season, consistent of only 10 episodes, is also the show's worst season, and it's not even close. By the end of season 6, the show is nearly unrecognizable. It's almost impressive how they somehow managed to completely dismantle it in only 10 episodes. It's probably the worst season of any of these Nick Jr. shows so far, not counting Band of Spies, and it's from the best show. So without further ado, let's jump into it. By the time season 6 premiered, Nickelodeon was a completely different place from when the show started back in 96. SpongeBob premiered in 99 and quickly replaced Rugrats as their flagship show. Schneider's Bakery was on the rise, and most significant to Blue's Clues, Dora the Explorer, another interactive preschool show, premiered in 2000, and would soon replace Blue's Clues as Nick Jr.'s most popular show. By 2004, Blue's Clues had gone from the preschool show to just another preschool show. One that Nick was clearly still happy to have, probably due to its legacy and prestige, but with more than enough episodes for syndication. It doesn't surprise me then that Nick decided to pull the plug on new episodes after ordering a final season of only 10 episodes, 1/3 the length of the previous 3. And almost everything about this season feels like a cry for help, a desperate plea for the attention of the preschool audience who had turned their backs to the show. Unlike the previous seasons, I'm going to go through season 6 episode by episode, both because it's short, but also because I find it necessary to illustrate how far the show fell. So buckle up. This season starts with the Legend of the Blue Puppy, another primetime special, which abandons the usual intro for a unique title card. The episode actually starts with the characters, or just a handful of them, looking at the blue moon, when down from the heavens descends Moona, the moon fairy.
Are you a moon fairy from the moon?
Is it wrong for me to imply that he's retarded?
She's here to tell them the legend of the Blue Puppy. It gives her a fairly similar backstory to the one from Blue's first holiday, Blue being the odd one out amongst a litter of puppies, but no mention of a farm or her being from a book, and with the added detail of this seemingly being caused by the first blue moon, and Blue being born with a key. And now that the blue moon is back, Blue can finally use that key to unlock her greatest gift. Why the heck is there a chosen one prophecy in Blue's Clues? You're telling me this key was just hiding inside polka dots this whole time? And wait a minute, in Blue's big treasure hunt, Grandma gives Blue a key to unlock all her favorite treasures, which hasn't appeared since. Why couldn't that have also been the key to unlock her greatest gift? I could maybe actually get behind this retcon if you made that connection, but you didn't. And now Blue has to find the lock. And Grandfather Clock is dead, but somehow his pendulum came to life. Halfway through, Blue finds the lock on this chest we've never seen before and unlocks her greatest gift, which is Blue's room, a pocket dimension inside the Blue's Clues world, which is already inside a book but is also a television show where
everyone is now a puppet.
Polka Dots is alive and shows her around and is also clearly male, portrayed in this season by Tim Lagasse. No, you played Crash, you're supposed to be better than this. Polka Dots introduces her to the rest of the Blue's room residents, all portrayed by other prolific puppeteers, except Silly Seat, who is voiced over by child actor Jared Goldsmith. There's Doodleboard, performed by Peter Lenz, Boogie Woogie and Rory the Dinosaur, performed by Joey Mazzarino, Frederica, performed by Cheryl Blaylock, and Dress Up Chest, also performed by Tim Lagasse this season. Weird that besides Polka Dots, none of these other characters have a Steve's House equivalent. The best thing about Blue's Playroom is that she can finally talk to all of us.
And when she started talking, it reminded us why we preferred it when she didn't.
Yeah, this was another result of the creators being mindful of their audience to a fault, and changing stuff that was perfectly fine at their request. To be fair though, having her talk in this separate dimension and segment from the main show was a lot better than if they'd had her start talking in the main show, since that would completely ruin the premise, and they already had different ideas for doing that, as you'll see. She's puppeteered here by Leslie Carrara Rudolph, another prolific puppeteer, but voiced over by child actress Victoria Ponteserva, because she's a puppy. Fair enough, I guess. We have a favorite color party and play a guessing game with Doodle.
I love you. I love you too, Doodle.
Oh. I love you too.
I love you too.
You guys all just met. Blue plays pretend doctor with Dress Up Chest and plays a dance game with Rory and Boogie Woogie. And even in Blue's room, the snail is still watching. They all sing together before it's time for Blue to go, and with this, you see a bit of a tonal shift. The episode ending with Joe emphasizing the relationship between the audience and Blue, instead of the relationship between the audience and him, like he usually would, and also with no goodbye song. At the end of the episode, we see the book is now in the Blues Room world, and the next episode, Love Day, introduces another new intro. This one identical to the season 5 intro, but beginning in the puppet world with Puppet Blue instead of the real world with Cartoon Blue, and Moona the Moon Fairy sending her into the cartoon world, and without Blue's barking. Today is Love Day, not Valentine's Day, Love Day. A Love Day card falls from the ceiling addressed to Joe.
Somebody loves me!
Joe doesn't know who sent it, but Blue does, so we have to play Blue's Clues to find out. The paw print kisses Joe, and we find out it wasn't the side table, but she does give him a heart-shaped notebook. We then get the debut of the shortened version of To Play Blue's Clues, which is featured in every episode this season, where we just jump straight into free paw prints and free clues instead of going one at a time, even though they still use the same child recordings from the previous rendition, which don't match up with the new lyrics.
To play Blue's Clues, we gotta find 3
This was presumably done for time, since now the last 5 minutes of each episode are dedicated to Blue's room. Not all is right in the Spice family, as Paprika has to learn her father can love her and her brother, which makes me realize that for how big a deal they made out of Cinnamon's birth compared to Paprika, there being a whole 5 episodes dedicated to it, this is the first time since his birth that he's actually been the focus of a scene, while Paprika got focus in several episodes between her and Cinnamon's birth. None of them sent the Love Day card either. Shovel and Pail learn they can still love each other even if they get mad sometimes.
It's love, love, love.
They didn't send it either. He asks Mailbox, but he didn't send it. They go inside the Book of Love, where they help a prince and princess with their story. No crap, they didn't send it.
You love me. You really love me.
So who could it be? Our clues are a mop, a castle, and a glass slipper.
Cinderella.
What? What the fuck? So you're telling me that you have all these characters with a pre-established connection to Joe, and you decided to have the mysterious sender we spent the whole episode looking for be a random fairy tale character we've never seen interact with him?
What were they thinking?
It means nothing. How does she know Joe enough to love him? She arrives in her pumpkin carriage, Snail watching us through the window, and portrayed by Felt, even though she's voiced by Mary Stuart Masterson, who later plays her in live action in the Blues Room segment. And disregarding the fact we've seen 2 completely different versions of Cinderella before this. In Blue's room, Blue gets to interview Cinderella, and we find out she married the prince, actually named Charles, and is now a shoemaker with a daughter named Ella, like Cinderella. And of course made nice with the stepsisters, because everything is just sunshine and rainbows. And the So Long song is replaced with the Goodbye song, which is not nearly as good, and I assume was also done for time. In Blue's stock, Joe is hosting a concert in the backyard. Our first performance is Tony Braxton singing the Planet song backed up by Tickety. Today we're finding musical clues, which Joe will play on a handy dandy kazoo, which does mean we're at least spared from talking clues in this episode. Joe, Blue, and Sidetable perform To Play Blue's Clues on stage. Then Macy Gray performs Do to Daisy with Periwinkle, which I didn't mention but was actually previously featured in the letter segment of Let's Boogie.
When you feel kind of funky, like it's funky.
India Ari performs a reggae version of Mail Time with Mailbox, and despite playing themselves, all three of these women are portrayed by Felt. I guess they couldn't get anybody else on a blue screen anymore. Eventually, Joe finishes the track singing We Just Got a Letter.
It's a letter from They Might Be Giants.
Singing Clap Your Hands, since this is when they were doing kids music, and it's also the reason this episode isn't on streaming. It turns out the song Blue wants to sing is Old MacDonald Had a Farm, and they're even joined by those 3 guest stars at the end. In Blue's room, we dissect the lyrics of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. This episode actually isn't that bad. Most of the musical performances are fine, but even the stronger episodes this season are brought down by being forced to dedicate their last 5 minutes to Blue's room, which just isn't very interesting at this point. Skidoo Adventure is probably the first episode where Blue's Clues isn't played. Joe and Blue skidoo into Wacky Wild World, an imaginary world they and their friends made out of various household materials. Before they can explore, their picture of home blows away, and they're told by a balloon fairy that they must go on an adventure to find it, and are given a wand to collect the 4 magic hidden letters. They have to use a cardboard bowl and oversized spoon Joe pulled out of Hammerspace to row across a river to the letter M. A bubble named Bubbly blows a bubble big enough for them to float in over a pit to the letter E. A clay blob morphs into a rocket for them to fly to the letter O, which is on the moon. And finally, they have to use a puzzle piece's clap-activated magic carpet to fly to the letter H. To return home, they must arrange the letters correctly to spell home. In Blue's room, they talk and sing about home. This episode's also not that bad. Blue's Wishes starts with Joe and Blue playing with a toy train before their train rolls behind the toy chest. They push it out of the way, revealing a secret door, and out from behind comes Wish, who tells them she'll be granting their wishes all day. Every wish they have to sing.
Wish come true, come true, come true. Wish come true.
And to reverse their wishes, they have to touch their noses with their pinkies. Their first wish is to be able to ride in their toy train, and now we have to play Blue's Clues to find out what else Blue wants to wish for. Along the way, they grant the wishes of their friends. Pale's wish to ride a horse from her book, Joe's wish to find a clue, Tickety's wish to meet a princess, Mr. Salt's wish to have a snack ready for Cinnamon, and finally, Blue's second wish is to ice skate. In Blue's room, they wish it's Fred's birthday. Another perfectly fine episode, but we are getting to the point where it feels like every episode has to be a special episode, and when every episode's special, none of them are. And the next episode is easily the worst of the entire series. In Joe's Clues, Blue and us have to play Joe's Clues to figure out what a surprise for us is, using orange handprints to mark the clues instead of paw prints, which sounds like it could be a cute change of pace, but right off the bat, they don't have the balls to let Blue bark to play Joe's Clues on her own, or have Joe lunge at the screen like Blue does, as scary as that would be. And instead of just letting Blue find the clues around the house like Joe always does, they add this completely unnecessary mechanic and force Joe to embarrass himself by having Joe send her to a duck who's just him in a costume, who sends him to Little Red Riding Hood who's just him in a costume, which is actually the second time Joe's portrayed Little Red after Can You Help, and sends them to Joe who's just him in a costume, and ends up being the first clue. They also have Tickety helping, which is understandable since Cartoon Blue can't speak English, but kind of reveals that this was a flawed concept to begin with, especially when we already had an episode where other characters look for clues instead of Joe. Blue does at least get to do mail time all by herself, because her next clue is in the letter. So she skidoos in and with help from this girl finds it on a stage. The third clue is inside Joe's backpack, but to get it, Blue has to catch him first. It evolves into complete chaos, and Joe just can't help but chime in at the end of We Sat on Down. town. It turns out his surprise is a music show, specifically the Joe Show, which is just him running back and forth in ridiculous costumes. He changes costumes faster than seems logically possible, so Joe, Duck, and Little Red might very well actually be separate entities. In this episode, Blue's Room is actually a relief from the main show. This episode is the only one I describe as truly mindless. It's just noise without an actual point. We go from the worst episode of the show to Playdates, which is definitely the best episode of the season. It's nothing amazing, but it's cute for what it is. We play magicians with Perry, help Mailbox deliver the mail, and Joe sings a song for us. And of course, we visit Blue's room to play pretend firefighters. In soccer practice, Blue's on a soccer team with magenta, orange, purple, periwinkle, and side table, and Joe is their coach. They warm up, and then we start Blue's Clues to figure out what we'll do after practice. Every goal will be a clue, and we'll sit on a thinking bench. The answer is eat an ice cream. And even outside the house, the chest still beckons her to Blue's room. She plays with Doodleboard, and they sing that same song.
'Cause I can talk with you.
This episode is also fine. The last official original Blue's Clues episode produced is the Fairy Tale Ball. Joe and Blue get invited to the titular Fairy Tale Ball.
It's the old woman who lives in a shoe. And so is Mary with her little lamb.
Both of those are nursery rhymes, not fairy tales. On the way there, they bump into the real Little Red, also on her way, and now we're gonna play Blue's Clues to find out who Blue wants to see there. For the first time as far as I can remember, Side Table skadoos to give Joe his notebook. Conveniently, there's an arrangement of mushrooms nearby that form the thinking chair. Joe, Blue, and Little Red hop on the fairy tale trolley to take them to the party. On their way, they bump into the Three Little Pigs, who need someone to blow down their houses for them since the wolf is at the beach apparently, which implies that they're for some reason forced to relive their story every day. But after Joe and Blue blow down the stick and straw houses, they say they'll now build all their houses with brick, implying they haven't gone through this all before. They have to help Jack plant the beanstalk so the giant can join them. So the beanstalk hasn't been planted yet, but Jack has already met the giant, unless Jack somehow found another handful of magic beans. They help Prince Charming return the glass slipper to yet another version of Cinderella. And yes, the prince is referred to as Charming, not Charles. We find out Blue wants to see Humpty Dumpty despite him being another nursery rhyme character, not a fairy tale.
We are going to the fairy tale ball with Red Riding Hood and the Three Little Pigs and Jack and the Giant and Cinderella and also the prince.
Teleportation? But surely enough, they see him and stop him from falling off another wall, implying someone was able to put them together again before. And even in fairy tale world, that damn chest is still there for her to enter Blue's room. We all play different fairy tale characters. Blue is Humpty Dumpty, while we get to be the horse. Fred is Little Red Riding Hood, or Little Fred Riding Hood. Surprisingly, they don't make that pawn. A missed opportunity, especially when they later have Blue and Silly Seat tell each other pawns.
Knock, knock. Who's there? Freda. Freda who? Who's afraid of the big bad wolf?
Polka Dots, Rory, and Dress Up Chest are the Three Little Pigs. Boogie Woogie is Rapunzel, Silly Seed is the wolf, and Doodleboard is some kind of royalty they don't specify.
You're the king's horse, put me together again.
But the nursery rhyme explicitly says all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. A pretty underwhelming finale for the show. We don't even get to say goodbye to the house or most of the mainstay characters. If I had to rank each season worst to best, obviously season 6 is at the bottom, followed by season 5. Not bad, well, maybe a bit towards the end, just not nearly as consistently memorable as the seasons that came before. Then season 1, which is a good start, but the show would get better. Then season 2, just an all-around improvement from season 1. Then season 4, despite kind of dropping off towards the end, it has way too many of the show's best episodes to rank any lower. And number 1 is season 3, like I already said. Blue Stalk was the last official episode of season 6 to premiere on May 10th, 2004. But that didn't make it the last official original episode to premiere, as the season 4 Steve episodes, Something to Do Blue and Blue's School, didn't air on TV until August August 1st, 2006 for some reason, though they were put on DVD in 2004. There were also 3 other Season 4 Steve episodes first released in 2003 after Steve had already left for college and Joe took his place, though then they promoted them as Lost Steve episodes. Joe and Tell and Joe Gets a Clue aired separately for the first time on August 3rd, 2006. Steve Goes to College would never air independently on main Nickelodeon, but all 3 episodes had been released on video beforehand. Interestingly enough, there's also 4 Season 6 episodes that never aired on Noggin or the Nick Jr. channel, despite all being released on video. Regardless of release anomalies, production ended in 2004, probably for the better in my opinion. But Blue wouldn't be gone for long. Not only was the show still in circulation through reruns on Nickelodeon and Noggin, but less than 3 months after Blue stock aired, Nickelodeon premiered Blue's Room, a full-length spin-off of the Season 6 Blue's Clues segment. Let's talk about it. You might have noticed that I said there were 10 episodes of Blue's Clues Season 6, but I've only discussed 9. That's because the first episode of Blue's Room, Snack Time Playdate, was actually produced as the 10th episode of Blue's Clues Season 6. So let's dive in. We of course start with the show's theme song, which is kind of an alternate extended version of the song sung in Legend of the Blue Puppy and Soccer Practice. All the clips in this version coming from the Blue's Room segments in Blue's Clues, including random audio clips which just kind of disrupt the flow of the song. Because this was filmed as part of Season 6's production block, unlike the rest of the show, the cast is completely consistent with Season 6. Blue spins the Playdate spinner, which lands on Snack Time, causing Muna to decorate the room with snacks. Polka Dots has a Snack Time Polka Dots puzzle, where with help from us, Blue will collect 4 puzzle pieces to find out Polka Dots' surprise, sort of this show's version of Blue's Clues. Unlike Blue's Clues, Blue's Room doesn't include child voices as a stand-in for the audience, instead simply letting the viewers fill in the pauses like most of the show's Blue's Clues inspired, which ignores that those child voices were there for a reason. We play a snack-themed edition of Doodle 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 Guess, and somehow pretending to eat the snack drawings causes them to actually disappear. Rory's favorite snack is carrots because they're orange, Polka Dots' favorite is pretzels because they have dots, and Blue's favorite is blueberry pancakes because they have blue, even though a lot of foods have blue, including just blueberries. Meanwhile, Fred is still chasing birthday cupcakes. Blue learns a new vocab word, scrumptious, with help from dictionary. We act out if you give a mouse a cookie, as Dress Up Chest narrates. Rory has a habit of adding a saurus at the end of words.
That was funny-asaurus! A lot of crazy-asaurus things can happen! Snack time playdate-asaurus!
The surprise ends up being a snack party, and we learn how to make banana pops. This show's ending song is Way Great Playdate.
It was a way great playdate with you.
This is the last appearance of the Handy Dandy Journal. Before we discuss the actual second episode, or actual first episode, I guess, I'd be remiss not to mention the obscure unofficial episode of Blue's Room, Singin' Boogie in Blue's Room, which was made exclusively for the VHS of the same name by Fisher-Price, to be included with the Singin' Boogie Blue toy released September 18th, 2004, between the airing of the show's official first and second episodes. The tape starts with a shortened version of Legend of the Blue Puppy, including just the prophecy and the Blue's Room segment, before transitioning to the actual exclusive episode. Blue comes up with a new dance, Doing the Blue, and teaches everyone. Then they reenact Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and of course, it's this ultra-sanitized version, where in the end, it turns out Goldilocks is friends with the bears, and they're completely okay with her breaking into their house, and it ends with them all doing their own dances. The real second episode is Fred's Birthday, aired November 24th, 2004. Right off the bat, the intro now has clips from the actual show. Blue brings out the Playdate spinner and now sings.
We're gonna have a playdate just for you and me.
It lands on Fred's birthday. This episode we play Birthday Party Puzzle Surprise. Polka Dots is now voiced by Peter Lenz.
Your birthday party puzzle surprise! Hi, Blue! Whoa.
He gives them a present inside a hint that leads them to the tree, under which is another present, with Polka Dots inside giving them another hint, this one leading them to Dress Up Chest, now voiced by Tyler Bunch. Though for his singing, they still use recordings of Tim Lagasse.
You just need your key to open me.
Press some time,
dress-up time!
They reenact Little Gorilla, which if you're wondering why you haven't heard of it, there's not much to it. It's definitely no if you give a mouse a cookie. Dress Up Chest gives them another present with polka dots inside, giving them another hint, which leads them to Boogie Woogie, who teaches them a new dance he calls the Fred, and gives them the last present with polka dots inside, giving Fred her surprise, a crown. Next is Beyond Your Wildest Dreams, aired April 18th, 2005. Blue spins the Playdate spinner and it lands on Pretend. First we pretend the jungle, then we pretend the ocean, and finally we pretend space cowboy robots. This is the best episode of the season. This show has its very own holiday special in the form of Holiday Wishes, which aired December 2004. We find out Joe is apparently visiting Blue's room for the holidays. With all the snow, they're afraid Joe won't be able to find his way, so they throw this candle out as a sacrifice. They doodle some decorations, which when they sing, it causes the decorations to actually appear in the room. They doodle a Christmas tree and a star, and lastly a menorah, which reveals that Rory is Jewish. Who knew?
There are 8 days of Hanukkah, and on each night we light candles to celebrate.
Fred, of course, wants to blow out the candles, but then Rory tells her what they're all about.
They tell the story about a fire that people thought would only last for 1 night, but it lasted for 8 nights instead.
And we find out Fred most likely only celebrates Christmas because it revolves around a birthday.
People from all over followed the light to a special birthday celebration.
And they try to parallel them putting a candle out to lead Joe to Blue's room to the star that led the wise men to Jesus.
Oh, like the light from the candle we put outside for Joe.
We meet Dreidel, voiced by Michael Rubin. I guess Boogie Woogie is Jewish too. There's no mention of Ramadan in this one, but more surprisingly than that, not even Kwanzaa. What the hell, Blue's Room? Joe rides in on a sleigh from somewhere elsewhere in the Blue's Room world, even though Blue's Room is a pocket dimension within the Blue's Clues house where Joe lives, accessed by unlocking that chest. Are we sure this is the real Joe? Or is Blue's Room like the other world in Coraline, made to trap Blue by presenting her with a world better than her own, where she can communicate with all of her friends? And this is actually the other Joe, the mastermind behind it all being that damn snail?
Nah, they just fucked up.
Up on the housetop.
You're not on a housetop, though.
I love you guys.
Since when have you met? Over the credits is a cast rendition of Jingle Bells with a really nice instrumental, but not as nice vocals since no one here can sing. Every other episode this season has kids singing some song over the credits, with footage of the characters hanging out with kids, actually from Blue's Clues spots, which were included on Blue's Clues and Blue's Room DVDs at the time, and presumably aired between commercials on television. It's not as good as either of Blue's Clues' holiday specials, but fine for what it is. This was followed by this show's Valentine's episode, It's Hug Day, and unlike Love Day, which is just an unnecessary substitute for Valentine's Day, Hug Day, or National Huggin' Day, is very real, first being celebrated in 1986, and taking place on January 21st, chosen because it's roughly the midpoint between Christmas and Valentine's Day, though I doubt this was deliberate, considering the coinciding DVD was released on the 25th, and the episode premiered on TV on February 7th. The Playdate spinner lands on a Hug Day, and of course Polka Dots has a special Hug Day Polka Dot surprise in store. But first we doodle the things we appreciate with Doodleboard: a male person, a teacher, and a tree. They play a special Hug Day game with Boogie Woogie. Well, a game usually implies competition, and here when you hear Woogie, you just hug whoever's closest to you, even if it's yourself, so not a game. They reenact Hug without help from Dress Up Chest. This time Blue narrates. You probably haven't heard of this book either, but it is at least better than Little Gorilla. The surprise turns out to be a Hug Day card which Blue gives to us. The characters all exchange cards as the episode ends. The final episode of the season is The Power of the Alphabet, aired November 18th, 2005. though like Hug Day, it was actually first released on video, the much better titled Alphabet Power, this time over 3 months before on August 2nd. Every Blues Room Season 1 episode would get a coinciding video release in non-chronological order, always including the titular Blues Room episode, along with 3 Blues Clues episodes from various points in the show, at best semi-related, from August 10th, 2004 to March 21st, 2006. The Playdate spinner lands on ABC's, and at that very moment, the entire alphabet happens to show up at Blues Room. We guessed letters with Doodleboard. We pretend animals with help from the letters. We read Chicka Chicka ABC with Antonio, who previously appeared in Holiday Wishes, as the letters acted out. Another classic, probably the first book I ever read. Again, Dress Up Chest is nowhere to be found. Not a bad episode to end the season. Season 1 of Blues Room is fine. It's better than Season 6 Blues Clues, but it probably has an even more rigid format than Blues Clues. Beyond Your Wildest Dreams is the best, largely due to it being the only one that really matches the scope of the average Blues Clues episode. It almost seems like a step backward from Blues Clues, which ushered in a new era of kids shows into something more retro. And the writers must have agreed, as with Season 2, they completely dropped the established formula in favor of something much more adventurous, which meant that characters with a primarily functional purpose got the shaft, especially with the addition of, technically 2, mainstay characters. And there's more cast changes. 2006 marked the 10th anniversary of Blues Clues Hidden in the Air, and Nickelodeon made sure you knew. On May 9th, they released the DVD Blues Jobs, with a special 10th anniversary label. On July 27th, they aired a mini-doc called Behind the Clues 10 Years with Blue, which gave new insights on the show's inception and production. On August 1st, they released the DVD Blues Biggest Stories, consisting of 8 episodes throughout the show's history. A questionable selection. There's no Season 1 episodes, 1 from Season 2 and 5, both the right calls, 2 from Season 3, the 2 specials, 2 Season 6 episodes, Legend of the Blue Puppy and Snack Time Playdate, and 2 from Season 4. Steve Goes to College, good choice, and Magenta Gets Glasses? Sure, it's a somewhat significant episode, but it didn't even air prime time, and it's boring. Weird they didn't include any of the baby birth episodes, since those are comparatively more significant and also more entertaining. If I put this together, I'd probably switch out Snack Time Playdate for Snack Time to get a Season 1 rep, and Magenta Gets Glasses for The Baby's Here. On August 8th, they released Blues Biggest Hits, consisting of 16 songs from across the show's discography. And most importantly, on August 6th, they premiered Blues Room's one and only primetime special and the franchise's one and only double-length episode, Meet Blues Baby Brother. This special starts with a unique title sequence accompanied by familiar music.
Blues Baby Brother.
This is followed by Blue inviting us in a similar manner to Steve, with more familiar music in the background. And another very familiar tune plays as she opens the door. We find out Blue and friends are having a family party, with characters from Blues Clues and Blues Room in attendance. From Blues Clues we have Joe, Mailbox, the Spice Family, and Shovel and Pail. And from Blues Room we have Polka Dots, Fred, Rory, and his grandma. The Spice Family and Shovel and Pail are shown entering through the door, which again makes little sense. Probably doppelgangers. There's one empty chair, apparently reserved for Blue's baby brother, who they'll find in Puppyville, which they access via picture on the wall. It's never explained who told them all this, probably Muna. Look at Dress Up Chest, just sitting there, lifeless, in the background. Once in Puppyville, they sing the Puppyville song, which is awesome. Good job, Nick and Mike. I knew y'all still had it in you.
Come on over, welcome to Puppyville.
They ask around for Blue's baby brother, but the puppies are completely unhelpful, before a gold paw print suddenly appears. Joe and Blue conclude that must mean that they'll have to play gold clues to find Blue's baby brother, and even sing a gold clues version of To Play Blues Clues, with backup from the puppies. During this song, they're miraculously given a gold notebook, and spot a golden Finken chair in the distance to sit in when they're done.
That's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
To look for clues, they hop aboard aboard the Puppyville Express, which is inexplicably themed to Steve, who unfortunately does not appear in the special. They find a puppy named Sprinkles, portrayed by Joey Mazzarino, who joins them on their adventure in pursuit of Spots.
Really? Really?
So you felt the need to dub a grown woman with a child's voice for Blue, but we're okay having a grown man voice a puppy doing a weird baby voice. At least be consistent, all the other puppies are voiced by children. In this season, Blue is puppeteered by Noel McNeil, being promoted from additional puppeteer after Leslie Carrara Rudolph left. I'd kill to hear the raw audio. On their way, they sing a variant of We Are Looking for Blue's Clues.
I have a baby brother. Wow.
Blue has a baby brother.
The first stop is Alphabet City, where Sprinkles gets pink spots for learning the alphabet, triggering a song.
I've got spots, and they're all over me.
They find their first clue, a bunch of balloons that spell puppy, so Blue's baby brother must be a puppy. No shit.
Who do you think my brother could be with a clue? Puppy.
Literally anyone, you're in Puppyville. They take the train to Color Town, where Sprinkles gets orange spots for learning his colors, and ride the rainbow to Numbers Kingdom, where Sprinkles gets purple spots for learning to count. Their second clue is circles, which again doesn't really narrow it down.
Golden thinking chair. Golden thinking chair.
Next stop is Shapes Forest, where they make a sailboat out of simple shapes. I'm sure none of these concepts will be revisited in a future Nick Jr. show. For learning all about shapes, Sprinkles gets yellow spots, and their third clue is colors. They finally sit in the golden thinking chair. From the clues, they determined Blue's baby brother was Sprinkles all along. Who would have guessed the character who got special focus would end up being important? After being told this, Sprinkles gets blue spots like Blue. I guess to show they're related? You know, I always assumed his name was Sprinkles because he's white with colorful spots like sprinkles on desserts. But apparently that's just a coincidence. Come to think of it, Puppyville's entirely populated by puppies. Is it where all puppies in the Blue's Clues universe come from before they're born? Are all puppies created asexually in the Blue's Clues universe? Perhaps by some benevolent higher power like Muna? The existence of all these other rainbow-colored highly intelligent puppies sure makes Blue seem less special. Perhaps there's Puppyville puppies and normal puppies, and the blue moon allowed for Blue, a Puppyville puppy, to be born amongst a litter of normal puppies. And half of the point of the prophecy was reconnecting Blue with her roots? I'm way overthinking this, aren't I? They bring Sprinkles home, and now the family party can finally commence. You made them wait 50 minutes. Overall, not the worst way to celebrate 10 years. This episode would rerun on Nick Jr. and Noggin the next day, and get its corresponding DVD release over 3 months later on November 14th, paired with the Blue's Clues episodes The Baby's Here and What's New Blue. And the series wouldn't return to Nickelodeon until January 26. Weirdly enough, you can find press releases from around the time referring to this as the series premiere, which is obviously untrue. Almost makes me think Nick wanted this to be a soft reboot of sorts. Also, I should mention that Meet Blue's Baby Brother wasn't technically produced as part of the Season 2 production block, which sometimes gets it referred to as a Blue's Clues episode, even though I wouldn't consider that accurate. The second episode produced for Season 2 was a way great playdate. Right off the bat, we've got an entirely new intro, with Blue and Sprinkles inviting us in. Actually different, with each episode having Blue say words that correspond with what they're doing at the start. The theme song itself now consists entirely of footage actually shot for it. Instead of the song being interrupted with random audio clips, it's interrupted with Blue greeting Joe and Sprinkles. Yes, Sprinkles and Joe are both mainstay characters now, which I think was the right call. The former because you can tell Blue's voice was aging, so having her become a big sister was a good fit. The latter because kids' puppet shows do tend to work better when you have a human character to keep the show grounded in our reality. The Blues Room gang plays Duck Duck Goose with their friend Jalen, but Jalen leaves without his duck hat. Instead of having a return address, the tag inside has an illustration of the farm he lives on. Joe uses his magic powers to transform a cardboard box into a working train. Well, one that works when you swing your arms and go chugga. Making me realize Donovan Patton would be great as Mr. Conductor.
Sparkle, sparkle, sparkle.
It's here they introduce the show's signature travel song that'll be included in the rest of the season.
Jalen lost his hat today, so
far and wide we roam.
Also altered depending on the episode. They find themselves in New York somehow. New York exists outside the Blue's Clues book, yet somehow also exists outside Blue's room, which is located inside a pocket dimension in the Blue's Clues book. Yeah, it's definitely a simulation. We learn about all the great stuff the city has to offer.
Skyscraper! Taxi!
Pretzels. In the spirit of the city, Joe transforms his train into a working taxi. Well, one that works when you say vroom vroom, beep beep. They stop at the beach where they sing the catchy tune.
We love the beach. We love the beach.
And finally, they fly to Jalen's house and return his hat. Joe is truly a master of all vehicles. In Sprinkles' sleepover, the Blues Room gang is all ready for bed except Sprinkles. So now we have to go around the house asking everyone how they get to sleep to help Sprinkles get to sleep. They read How Do Dinosaurs Say Goodnight with Rory, kind of a throwback to season 1. This doesn't work for Sprinkles. Doodleboard doodles what he wants to dream of, which doesn't work for Sprinkles. Joe counts ducks. Sprinkles tries counting blues, which doesn't work. Blue sings herself to sleep, and Sprinkles says goodnight to everyone and everything, which finally helps him fall asleep. Little Red Riding Blue is a favorite of mine. Blue and Sprinkles are reading Little Red Riding Hood when Blue suggests they play the story. For costumes, they go to Dress Up Chess, which is the first time he's been relevant in a while, and is also the last time he'll be relevant. It's still Tyler Bunch, but his voice is very different.
I have these furry ears and a snout.
Blue gets cast as Little Red, while Joe gets cast as the Big Bad Wolf, in a role reversal of Can You Help? Joe's portrayal of the Big Bad Wolf is definitely the highlight of the episode, but I think they thought he might scare kids, so they have him remind us multiple times.
It's really me, Joe.
Rory plays Little Red's grandma, and Fred plays Little Red's mother. Sprinkles tags along as Little Red's little brother, and we're allowed to be whoever we want, I guess.
Who do you want to be?
Yeah.
What a good choice.
You know the story. Little Red's grandma is sick, so her mother sends her to Grandma's house to make her feel better. In this version with banana bread, which we see them make with help from Cookbook, who's very similar to Dictionary. And of course, in this more modern version, Little Red asks first before being sent on her own, and is accompanied by a trusted adult in the form of Doodleboard. They make it through the woods with help from Doodles before they run into the wolf, who wants the banana bread. As they walk across a bridge, the wolf disguises as a toll collector to try and con them out of the bread, but to no avail. As the story goes, he disguises as Grandma to be given the bread, and rather weakly tries to swipe it once they see through the disguise. And this wolf couldn't even be bothered to lock Grandma in the closet. We finally convince him to just ask Grandma, and as it turns out, there's just enough slices to feed Doodle, Blue, Sprinkles, Grandma, us, and the wolf. So I guess the moral of the story is no longer don't talk to strangers, but ask for permission.
Yahoo! This is the greatest day of my life!
You have pretty low standards then. You've presumably had banana bread before. What makes this time so special? It's always interesting seeing the different ways these kiddie shows reinterpret fairy tales. They usually feel obligated to include them somehow since they're such ubiquitous children's stories that have been passed down for generations. But because our standards for what's acceptable in a children's story have changed drastically, they always have to make changes, sometimes more questionable than others. This episode presents just about the most sanitized version of the story imaginable, and in the process trades in the original moral for a new one. That being said, it's still fun seeing these characters take on these roles. The very next episode, Knights of the Snack Table, also sees the characters going on a roleplay adventure, but this time they just jump right into them playing Castle Times with no introduction. Blue, Sprinkles, and us are knights enlisted by King Joe to find his 4 lost dragons. With help from Princess Fred, they speak a castle into existence, and at the top find the green dragon. Wizard Rory uses a spell to bring them the red dragon. By drawing a maze to the blue dragon, Doodleboard is able to retrieve the blue dragon, and they find the silver dragon hiding behind an owl with help from Jester Polka Dots, which is the first time he's been relevant in a while. They just kind of use him whenever they need an extra character now. Due to the show ditching its original format and Sprinkles replacing him as the show's deuteragonist, his presence has significantly decreased. Similarly, so has that of Dress Up Chest and Boogie Woogie. and Dictionary and Silly Seat have disappeared entirely. Peter Linz also left the show, leading Polka Dots to be recast again with Pam Arcero, and Doodleboard with James Godwin, both of which are very noticeable.
Let's have a birthday party for Fred on our play day. Ta-da! Just polka dots.
What I really like about the holidays is all the decorations.
Greetings, knights!
The episode ends with Joe declaring us the bravest knight of all. It's okay, but Blue's Clues already had an episode with the characters role-playing a generic fantasy adventure, and that was one of their best. No way you were gonna top it. In Blue's farm playdate, Sprinkles and Blue are playing farm when they run into Old MacDonald, who leaves them in charge of his farm while he's gone, giving them a checklist. First, they fill a carton of eggs from the chickens with help from Fred, and they got kinda lazy in this one by having all the animals represented in the original show's cutout animation instead of building new puppets. Then they milk a cow to fill a bucket. They feed a pig corn with help from Rory, and finally, they all work together to pull a carrot for Sprinkles to feed to the horse. And when Old MacDonald comes back, they all celebrate their job well done by singing that song together. As mentioned in this New York Times review, this version of farming was pretty much dead by the time this episode came out, and thus its practical application for children is unlikely. And yet, alongside fairy tales and medieval archetypes, it's something every toddler show decided kids needed to learn about. Surprisingly, my favorite episode ended up being one I'd never seen before. Shape detectives. Blue, Sprinkles, and Joe are shape detectives, finding different shapes across the room, which is nothing like being a shape searcher. Rory shows them his masterpiece when the shapes leave the picture one by one, and now we have to find them. Blue and Sprinkles meet Polka Dots at his door, who tells them the circle is hiding with the other circles, and using their magnifying glass, we find it hiding behind the clock before it runs away behind Polka Dots. They find it again, and it runs back to the picture. Blue and Sprinkles meet Doodleboard, who reveals the rectangle and triangle are hiding in his drawings somehow before he even draws them. There's no more struggle with these. They immediately run back to the picture. Joe joins them to meet Fred at the lamp post, who gives them an envelope with a riddle inside for Blue from the Pentagon, who leads them to a stop sign with a riddle for Joe, which leads them to Polka Dots, who has the final riddle for Sprinkles, which leads them to a key which unlocks the Pentagon's location, and the picture is restored. In Masterpiece Museum, Blue and Sprinkles are making art when Polka Dots introduces them to art museums, which in this episode consist of pointillism, a specific painting technique, sculptures, a specific branch of art, and the vague masterpiece, which in a broad sense just refers to works that are highly regarded. They decide to make their own museum in the room based on this model. They fill the pointillism exhibit with free pointillist drawings from Doodle. They fill the sculpture exhibit with free clay sculptures from Joe, Fred, and Rory, and they make a masterpiece combining elements from Starry Night, Free Musicians, and a work by Henry Matisse, which they refer to here as Blue Hair. An odd choice since it's not even his most famous cutout, though to be fair, his most famous cutouts all have naked ladies, so they combine them all with this drawing of a little boy with help from Magic and Colors Puppy. And outside the door to see the museum are Shapes Puppy, ABC Puppy, Princess Puppy, and Numbers Puppy, because I guess they decided they're recurrent characters now. Rory and Fred are also there despite contributing to the museum, and Boogie Woogie is there practically as an extra since Blue fails to notice him when pointing out people in the crowd.
There's Fred and Rory.
Yeah, and Shapes Puppy and ABC Puppy.
I see the Princess of Numbers Puppy.
In Music Stars, Blue and Sprinkles are playing instruments, catching the attention of Boogie Woogie, who encourages them to be music stars.
Music stars.
Music stars. But before they can go on stage, they have to learn an instrument, create lyrics, and create a dance for a song. Rory gives them a melody on his xylophone, ABC Puppy gives them lyrics using rhyming words, and Joe gives them a dance that matches the lyrics. Finally, they do it all on stage and perform Way Great Playdate as their encore. Very similar to Shape Detectives, in Mathstronauts, the Princess of Numbers is ready to blast off in a rocket. Don't question it. But before she can count down, the numbers numbers 7, 4, and 1 leave her rocket, and for some reason she can't blast off without them, so now Blue and Sprinkles have to be mathstronauts to retrieve them. Polka Dots, as mission control, tells them they'll find number 7 in a constellation. First, it's with Leo, who passes it to Ursa Major, who just hands it to them. Then they find themselves on Venus, where they run into Robot Rory, who will lead them to the number 4, but first needs 8 meteors to power him. He retrieves it from the top of a mountain. The number 1 is with the planets, which triggers another very familiar tune. Before they can get it, they run into Alien Joe, Joe from another planet, wearing Steve's Halloween costume, or costume party costume. Whatever. He helps them find the number 1 by telling them the numbered planet from the sun it's hiding behind as it switches. They've now found every number and blast off together, running into all the previous characters as they fly through space, which is confusing since they were supposedly already in space.
Come on, Joe! Do the robot with me!
The last episode of Blue's Room produced, and thus the last episode of the franchise produced for over a decade, and after over a decade on the air and in production, is World Travelers. Blue and Sprinkles find a mysterious suitcase with 3 keyholes. At that moment, a treasure map suddenly appears, showing them the blue key in the glaciers of Antarctica, the green key in the Brazilian rainforest, and the orange key by the Egyptian pyramids. Sprinkles already has a plane ready for this occasion that'll bring them wherever they tell it. First stop, Antarctica, where they run into Polka Penguin, who makes an ice staircase for them so he can climb to the top of the glacier where the blue key is. Next is Brazil, where they meet Squirrel Monkey Rory, who leads them to the toucan who he lent the green key to. And look, actual puppets. The toucan lent it to the tree frog. Finally, there's Egypt, where they run into Pharaoh Joe, who helps them read the hieroglyphics that lead them to the key. Inside the chest is a snow globe that recaps their adventure. Honestly, not a bad episode to end on. I'm glad we could end on this instead of Fairy Tale Ball. Season 2 in general is definitely an improvement over Season 1. And while not as good as Blue's Clues' first 4 seasons, I honestly might even prefer it over Season 5. The last episode of Blue's Room to premiere was Music Stars on March 29th, 2007, after a short run of 2 seasons and 17 episodes. Puppet shows were declining and also becoming way more expensive than animation, so it doesn't surprise me that Nick decided to pull the plug on it early. When Blue's Clues premiered, the only other Nick Jr. shows produced in-house were live action. By the time Blue's Room ended, all animation. Knights of the Snack Table was actually first released on DVD on January 30th, nearly 2 months before its TV premiere, alongside Farm Playdate, which was the first Season 2 episode to air. The show's remaining free DVDs would release after the show's end. Shape Detectives, including the titular episode and Mathstronauts on May 29th, Little Blue Riding Hood featuring Little Red Riding Blue and Masterpiece Museum on July 3rd. I don't know why they made the DVD title different from the episode title. It doesn't make sense. The hood is still red, not blue. Though, to be fair, the episode title implies that blue is red, which is also not true. And lastly, World Travelers, including the titular episode and Away Great Playdate on November 13th. On April 15, 2008, Sprinkles Sleepover was included on the Nick Jr. compilation disc, Sleepy Time Stories, making every Blue's Room episode available on DVD except Music Stars. If you're wondering, 85 of Blue's Clues' 140 episodes have been released on DVD in the US. 16 additional episodes were only released on DVD in Australia, which got the show's one and only full season release. 5 episodes were only released in the US on iTunes collections, 2 were only released on iTunes collections and VHS, and 13 were only released on VHS. Blue's Room would last air on Nickelodeon on January 14th, 2008, and Noggin would rerun most of Season 2 as part of its lineup from 2007 to 2009, and starting in December 2008, would air Season 1's 2 holiday specials around the corresponding holidays annually, even going into the Nick Jr. rebrand until February 2011. Blue's Clues would last air on Nickelodeon on May 22nd, 2009, 2008, but it's clear Nick continued to see Blue as a valuable property well into the 2010s, as Blues Room episodes were included on Nick Jr. compilations as late as 2014, and Blues Clues as late as 2016, and Blues Clues would rerun on Noggin, later the Nick Jr. channel, practically non-stop with only 2 brief interruptions from launch until July 1st, 2019, and in a nearly 23-year run on cable television, just in time for the debut of a brand new iteration. And why not? Blues Clues was revolutionary, the show that put Nick Jr. on the map, the show that raised the bar for preschool television. I still prefer the Upside Down show personally. Seriously, Nick, please bring it back. Shane and David aren't getting younger. At its best, it was pretty much the perfect preschool show. It was gentle but never patronizing, very educational with great lessons, catchy music, creative settings, a distinct visual style, and memorable characters. Maybe it ran a bit too long, but even when its spin-off, it still managed to end with some of its dignity intact. All of these shows that came after owe their existence to Blues Clues in one way or another. So tune in next time on this mini-series when we dive into the show that surpassed Blues Clues in popularity by stealing most of its ideas and doing them far worse. Send help.
Thank you.